This is Nick Brody, the rock and roll roadie, coming at you with tales of the wildest legends in rock and blues. Stories about the people and the gear that makes the magic and the jaw-dropping yarns these rock gods spin. Today, from our Music Maker biography series, I'm bringing you the lowdown on arguably the greatest guitarist of all time, Eddie Van Halen. This one hits home for me because Eddie was the reason I ever picked up a guitar. Stick around till the end for a killer fact that'll blow your mind. Let's get to it. Few names in rock light up the stage quite like Eddie Van Halen. The guy wasn't just a guitarist. He was a six-string sorcerer, a sound innovator, and one of the most iconic axe slingers to ever hit the scene. His story is all about passion, grit, and straight-up game-changing genius. Born on January 26, 1955 in Nijmegen, Netherlands, Edward Lodewijk Van Halen came into this world with music pumping through his veins. His old man Jan was a jazz cat, and his mom Eugenia kept the vibe groovy at home. In 1962, the Van Halens packed up and hit the road to Pasadena, California, chasing their slice of the American dream. Eddie and his brother Alex got their start tickling the ivories with classical piano lessons, but it didn't take long for the rock and roll bug to bite. Eddie started out banging the drums, but when he saw Alex had the rhythm chops, he switched to guitar. And man, was that a game changer. That move set Eddie on the path to shred master history. Fast forward to the early 70s. The Van Halen brothers were tearing up the local scene with a few bands before locking in on the name Van Halen. Add in the wild and flashy frontman David Lee Roth and the bass-thumping Michael Anthony, and you had a lineup built to blow the roofs off of any venue they played. They started rocking backyard parties and LA clubs, earning a rep louder than a stack of Marshalls. In 1978, Van Halen dropped their debut album, and it was like an atom bomb in the rock scene. Tracks like Runnin' with the Devil, their cover of the Kinks' You Really Got Me, and Eddie's jaw-dropping solo Eruption turned the world upside down. His revolutionary tapping technique set a new bar for what a guitar could be, and melted plenty of faces along the way. But Eddie wasn't just about shredding. The dude was a total mad scientist with his gear. He built his Frankenstrap, that iconic red and white striped axe, out of spare parts, and even hacked it up with a saw to get the sound he wanted. He was all about tweaking, experimenting, and chasing the perfect tone. The guy was as much an inventor as he was a player. The 80s saw Van Halen ruling the airwaves with another Godzilla of an album, 1984, with arena-sized anthems like Jump, Panama, and Hot for Teacher. And now, here's what my wife would call a useless fact. The song Panama was inspired by a car named Panama Express that David Lee Roth saw race in Las Vegas. Roth wrote the song after being criticized for only writing about women and partying. Also, in the background of the bridge, Eddie can be heard revving his 1972 Lamborghini Miura S. With Eddie's electrifying licks and Roth's over-the-top antics in the videos, 1984 made Van Halen rock royalty. Around the same time, Michael Jackson was recording his groundbreaking album, Thriller. Even though Eddie Van Halen was never credited on the album, he famously provided the guitar solo for the 1982 monster hit Beat It. But Eddie had to break a band rule to do it. Jackson enlisted a cavalcade of top-tier musicians for his Thriller album. Among them were Toto members Steve Lukather, David Page, Jeff Porcaro. Lukather handled a lot of the album's guitar parts, but producer Quincy Jones wanted someone else for the fiery Beat It solo. When Quincy first tried recruiting Eddie for the project, he was given a gruff response. Eddie wasn't convinced that it was actually Quincy on the phone. When he finally realized it was Quincy, he was still reluctant to participate. Eddie didn't want to do it at first because Van Halen had a no outside sessions band rule. They all agreed that no one would do solo projects and they wouldn't play on other people's records. Eddie finally agreed to take part, disregarding the band rule. After all, it was Michael Jackson. So Quincy sent the tapes to Eddie, and Eddie laid the track down at his home studio. In a 2012 interview, Eddie said, "I listened to the song and I immediately go, can I change some parts? I turn to the engineer and I go, okay, from the breakdown, chop in this part, go to this piece pre-chorus to the chorus. Out." It took maybe 10 minutes to put it together, and I proceeded to improvise 2 solos over it. Legend goes that Quincy took part of one take and part of the second take and put them together, which then became the iconic solo we all know today. Beat It became a chart-topping mega hit, ranking among the best-selling singles of all time. Eddie later named it his favorite collaboration of his career. After the 1984 tour, Eddie and David Lee Roth were butting heads more than usual. They had very different visions for the direction of the band. This led to Roth wanting to form a new band and ultimately leaving Van Halen. When Roth split in '85, Sammy Hagar stepped in, and the band just kept cranking out hits with albums like 5150 and OU 812, ushering in the Van Hagar era. While many argue over which era was better, there is no denying that the Van Hagar era was more lucrative and had better album sales. Cha-ching! Van Halen also did better on the Billboard charts with Sammy as the frontman. Off stage, Eddie faced his share of storms. Years of jumping around on stage took its toll. He had hip replacement surgery in 1999. He also battled booze and further health struggles, including a fight with tongue and throat cancer. In 2007, Eddie divorced his actress and total babe, wife, Valerie Bertinelli. But through it all, his love for music never burned out. Eddie kept the fire alive, inspiring legions of fans and musicians with every note he played. The 2000s also saw further drama in the band with the ouster of bassist Michael Anthony. In a surprising twist of events, Eddie's son, 15-year-old Wolfgang, took over the bass and high harmony duties. I saw them in Toronto in October of 2007. Young Wolfgang held his own. But I still miss Mike. Those high harmonies are an important part of the Van Halen sound. On October 6, 2020, the world lost Eddie Van Halen at 65.
Breaking news first at 4, one of the greatest guitarists of all time is dead. Eddie Van Halen passing away after a long battle with cancer. The news was first reported by TMZ and confirmed in a tweet by his son. Van Halen, of course, founded the band that shared his name back in the 1970s. They are one of the best-selling artists of all time. The guitarist has been dealing with the effects of cancer for the last decade. His son, in a message on Twitter, called him, quote, the best father he could have ever asked for. He said every moment with his father was a gift.
His legend is immortal. This wasn't just some guitarist. He was a trailblazer who rewrote the book on what a guitar could do and sound like. Eddie once said, if it's not fun, you're not doing it right. He lived by those words, bringing joy, energy, and pure rock and roll spirit to the world. His genius lives on, shredding through the amps of history. Who's the greatest guitarist of all time? I think it's Eddie Van Halen. Others may disagree, but you can't deny the fact that no one has impacted an instrument more. If you don't think Eddie's the GOAT, then tell me in comments who you think is. Here's a mind-blowing fact. Eruption was an accident. In an interview with Rolling Stone, Eddie revealed that the classic guitar solo track was never supposed to be recorded. He and the band were at Sunset Studios in Hollywood. and their engineer Don Landy recorded some of Eddie's rehearsals by accident. That accident became Eruption, one of Van Halen's most well-known tracks. That's probably one of the most important accidents in music history. Thank you, Eddie. Rest in peace, brother. If you like this video, please smash that subscribe button. Give me a like, drop a comment, and share this with your crew. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll know every time we drop a new episode. Help a roadie out. Until the needle drops again. Nick Brody Rock and Roll Roadie. Out! If you like this video, here's another one for you to check out.